Hi, I'm Trinity.
And I'm Courtney, and we're Left-Right Collective.
And today's topic is all about communication.
Mm-hmm. Let's cheers before we
Yes,
start.
of course. Cheers, clink and wink.
Got my notes as usual. All right.
How am I a Capricorn? Another ways.
I know. All right. So, communication. I always see that post that says communication. It's also like comprehension. And I think it is so much more than that. So the first point I said, is it really that important? So what's your take on that?
For being such a broad topic, I think it is important to say my feelings on communication are it's essential. How else are you able to be in an interpersonal experience in any way, shape, or form, whether it be friend to friend, with our parents, with our children, at work, with our person? If you are not communicating what you're thinking and feeling in a constructive way, resentment can build. Cuckoo LaRue shit can go on in the head. There are a multitude of things that will come out later in any type of conversation if communication isn't happening throughout the experience.
Yep. I agree with all of that, and I wrote the same thing. Yes, I think it's important. But it's so much more than just communication.
Sure.
It's not like a make or break type thing in relationships. They say that I hate saying like communication is everything. No, it's not. It's so much more than just communicating. And we'll get into that later.
So just saying, Courtney and I, when we decide to come together and we film our videos, we each come up with a topic. I got it all up here. She writes it all out. But that's why I feel what we're doing is part of like why we call it a chat is that I have no idea what her notes are, and that's like what makes it a chat, So will you go deeper with what you're saying about like how communication is not just the only part of the experience of a relationship with someone?
Well, I think and that's going to bring me to like the next part that I wrote. For me, it's I don't know, it's everything. It's how you communicate. It's understanding.
How somebody communicates with you or how they understand you when you're communicating with them?
All of it.
Yes.
Yeah. Because when someone's communicating, sometimes they're angry and sometimes it's a calm conversation. And sometimes they're communicating for good things and sometimes for not so good things. So it's
is it the delivery of the communication or is it or is it how they're articulating themselves to you in their emotional experience and the way they're communicating in that moment?
Well, I think it's all of it. And I think that it comes from how you were raised, because that's your inner child usually speaking. I don't want to say if you haven't done the work, because I think it comes out regardless, because we're always doing the work.
Oh, that's not necessarily true. I'll drink to that.
But okay, so I'll go into I'll touch more on that first question.
So why don't you guide me through this, because you have put together your content and I don't want to off-road it.
Okay. Why do you think so many people fail at communicating?
Well, girl. My throat has something to say. I feel if communication is tough, going back to the inner child, we were raised around people that didn't know how to communicate with one another. It was shown in ways of either withdrawal, in action wave based ways of like not using words, but like either withdrawing or being hectic and aggressive in a physical way, just like not even like hurting the other person, but just like storming around the house and like almost like temper tantrums in a way, like physically. I think people have a fear of sharing their true deepest emotions because of how the other person's gonna accept them or feel about them in those experiences. And I actually saw a post on Instagram, the holistic psychologist, and she was talking about, and I saw that you liked it, and how connection is connection. And we often wonder why people are in experiences and relationships when, from an outward point of view, and even the person who's in the relationship will just, they're like, this sucks, this is blah, 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 blah. But they were only taught that because that's what they saw in their childhood growing up. And we all want connection, whether it's friendship, romantic, with your kids, whomever. And a fear of loss is why I think we have a hard time truly communicating our thoughts and emotions and feelings because we don't want to lose a connection.
I agree with everything you said. I actually wrote down like a lot of what you said.
She loves me. I was just joking. I mean, she does. I love her too. We communicate that all the time.
For me, why I think so many people fail at communicating, I think a lot of people can relate to this. For me, like I learned that love was chaos and betrayal. I wrote that down.
Ouch.
And so it's kind of like how you were brought up and raised. It, like what you were saying, is kind of your take on how you communicate. So
do you want to use a personal experience, or is that too much? Is that too deep?
We can go. We can go there. Like for an example, just a pretty general one that so many people they don't have a parent figure, whether it's the mom or dad. And for me, like my dad, we moved away when we were second grade, so how old that is, 8, around there.
Rory's in second grade. She's 7. Yeah, okay. 7, 8.
So, and then when we moved away, like I didn't really talk to my dad that much. He just wasn't really there, especially emotionally. And to this day, he's not. We just don't have that kind of relationship. So
how did that affect you in the way of communicating?
Feeling abandoned and not good enough. And so, I don't know. To me, that's like kind of also betrayal. And so I shut down a lot, and I'm working on it. But it's, I think, hard for me to be, I'm going to mess up this word.
You're not going to mess it up.
Vulnerable. There we go. I kind of said it weird. And it's hard for me to feel that way.
Feeling vulnerable.
Yes.
In conversation, in communication.
Yes. And feeling safe and able to communicate, because I'm just so used to people leaving me in life.
So abandonment stuff.
Yeah.
So with all of that being said, is that hard for you to emotionally open up with communication in your relationships because of those deep feelings of not feeling safe and trusting when you do communicate with someone?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
100%. And it's like the times that I do feel safe and I do open up and communicate, then it's like on the other end, how that person's mindset is and how they might not relate to how I was brought up, or how do I want to explain this? Like, just like two different, not mindsets, but brought up differently. And I think the reason why people fail is because they're not really listening to that friend or that partner or whatever.
They're not hearing them.
Right.
Or they're waiting to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So the level of communication could be one-sided,
Yeah.
or it's combative.
Yeah.
Because of the way that they were raised and taught how to communicate.
Or misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So...
Well, gosh, babe, I think you just opened up a layer of something else that we probably have to chat about in a future video, because, you know, communication, I feel, is all about how you're able to articulate yourself in any experience, and not coming from ego,
Mm-hmm.
coming from your true authentic self. And learning how to truly communicate is learning who you truly are.
Right.
And understanding that when you even said it, like, people who don't do the work, they don't, and that you're able to recognize when somebody is only speaking from their limited belief system. And I say limited belief system with not their fault quotations, you know. I think we all inherently come in the gates wanting to feel love in a true way, and then we're told, don't be this way, don't do this, don't act like that, don't speak like this. And then maybe they have abusive parents, or abusive towards each other, or they're abusive towards the children. And so communication becomes very convoluted.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody builds up walls, so everybody communicates around those walls. And then when people get into, and it's not even just romantic relationships, friendships,
Right.
how you raise your kids, everything. It's I think communication is, first, the foundation has to be built from knowing yourself truly, and then you go into every experience that you have speaking from your authentic self, and from there you're able to understand who you are able to communicate with.
Right. I agree.
Sing it. Sing it. Anything else you want to touch on?
So how would you handle someone who has like an emotional reaction to...
Oh, like my ex-husband?
Yeah, anger, yelling, crying, dealing with that. Like, how would you deal with someone?
If I'm not triggered, I'm able to calmly articulate myself and express what I need to express. If I am triggered, and the only one who can really trigger me is my oldest child, I've never met anybody as powerful as her that can take me out of myself, that it teaches me how better to settle myself and be more present before I communicate with her, because I'm dealing with somebody who is going through abstract thinking, hasn't had quite enough of life experience or suffered much or anything. And I have to be more empathetic from her perspective, because my ego wants to jump in, especially as a parent.
Mm.
So in that moment, I have to pause, which I'm not saying I'm an expert at this, because I'm not. I'm working on it. And I pause, and then I think about how my words are going to affect and shape this person. But when dealing with my ex-husband, fucking no holds barred. I just let loose.
You're funny.
That is the truth. I'm always truthful.
Do you think it's like, because you say your oldest bothers you the most, or I should say triggers you the most? Do you think it's because, I mean, you've been doing this work relatively new, I guess. So Kai was grown, like she was raised different than the other two.
Yes and no. I feel I really started this truly and deeply 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
in the last year of the marriage, because I was just like asking the existential question, like, how is this my life? This can't be my life. I know, and anybody who's not anybody, I can't speak for everyone, but for me personally, being a parent, and when I got pregnant with Kai and having her, it taught me so many things about myself, to be more present, to look outside. I'm a very self-absorbed person. My favorite topic is me. And, and it's like she gave me more self-awareness. And then also I feel, I believe in soul contracts, and I believe in soul bonds and things of that nature. And I know Kai was part of my journey to be more tolerant, self-aware, patient, understanding, compassionate. Because if I don't like you, fucking just write your fucking ass off. But I can't really do that to my own child. So I'm really easy at bye. So communicating with her helps make me a better communicator.
Right.
Because I want her to be a great communicator, and I want her to feel safe in sharing and without judgment. And she's the most judgmental motherfucker I've ever met in my life. I call her Judge Judy. Like, where do you get off, bitch? You've lived 16 years. She's getting better too.
That's why you teach them young.
That's the point. So they don't have to reteach themselves later.
Yeah. So I kind of wrote down, it can be overwhelming to be around someone who is just in an emotional state where they're speaking from ego or whatever. It's their inner child speaking. We usually know that when someone's angry or yelling.
I have a hard time with somebody who loses their shit emotionally.
Yeah.
And it's like, just like
a mess.
Yeah.
Same.
I mean, and we giggle because it's not like we don't feel sympathy, but we're just kind of like, pull it together.
But that's probably because that's what we were shown.
Yes, and if you're somebody who wants to just go, blah, live your fucking truth. No, honestly, no judgment.
So some key things that I wrote down, and I know Cheryl has told me this a few times. She says when you're in that kind of situation, stop and pause, like what you said. Witness, so observe, identify the situation. I wrote down, remember they're speaking from ego, usually. Breathe, and then boundaries. So boundaries would be, for example, if they're raging and slamming doors and yelling, you would say to them, I'm not going to speak to you when you're acting this way. When you want to calm down, I'll speak to you. And I have practiced that so many times.
Well, I understand this too, because we've said this before. We share the same psychotherapist. So when somebody doesn't feel heard, they react in such a way that has to be physically violent, and God willing, not towards you, especially not towards you, but when they do it in a physical sense of like slamming doors or breaking plates or anything of that nature, it's their inner child not feeling heard. So it's a little kid throwing a tantrum and not knowing how to express their emotions, because their emotions have always been repressed and told, don't feel this way, don't be this way. And they're acting out. And if you're able to hold space because that person is able to communicate with you in a loving way outside of that temper tantrum, then if you're able to hold space for them when they're doing such behaviors, that's up to you to decide if you want to continue communicating with that person when they're calm. To me, that would be a red flag. But I can't say what a red flag is for you personally. If they were able to express after that said temper tantrum, wow, I realized I was acting like a dickhead. I don't want to behave like that anymore. I want to do the work to make changes. That's when there's growth.
Right.
So I think communication is all about wanting each other to grow, not stifle, not control.
I agree.
Not scream.
Mm-hmm.
you need to hear me. So this is how I communicate. I think that's how I say communicate. We only know what one another is thinking, no matter how intuitive or psychic you may be. You only know what somebody's thinking unless they tell you. So, communication is everything.
And much more. So many things. I feel like I was going to say one other thing. I don't know. I don't know. If you're struggling with communicating with someone who you really care for, I think the biggest thing is take a look in the mirror and do those few things. Stop, pause, identify the situation, breathe, have boundaries, all those things. And really like sit down with them and say, hey, if you know, we're struggling through this, let's talk about it in a calm manner, because nobody needs to be yelling and screaming at each other.
I say this with my kids all the time. There's no reason to freak out. We are capable of expressing ourselves. I mean, they're old enough now to express themselves, that we can talk about it in a manner that does not make us feel that we need to be aggressive or emotional. And not saying that you can't feel those feelings. You're meant to feel all the feels. It's in a communicative way with another person that you're able to articulate yourself. And if you want to have all the feels, and find a way to release that first. Say, like, you know, hold space for me. I need to go release something that I'm feeling. Go outside and scream, or go outside and walk, or punch a pillow, or I don't really like punching, but, you know, dance, or anything that is constructive to channel energy in another form. That when you're communicating, you're able to be present and you're able to speak clearly and share your thoughts and how you truly feel.
Mm-hmm. And if that person is not doing that, cut them off. Bye. Nobody needs to live their life in that like struggle battle. But that's another video.
It is. I know. So I think we've covered this pretty well in the way that we best can, until we can come up with a video that goes even deeper, because we're just scratching the surface. So, all right, thank you for being with us.